On the morning of January 18, 1977, at precisely 6:09 a.m., a commuter train departed from Mount Victoria, commencing its routine journey toward Sydney. Nearly 470 passengers crowded into carriages with wooden bodies, converted hastily from enclosed compartments into a more open arrangement. Leading the convoy was electric locomotive 4620, guiding the train toward Granville station. The final stop before the urban expanse. Ongoing construction near the station imposed speed restrictions. Yet beneath the surface, years of neglect, cost-cutting, and insufficient inspections had left serious structural weaknesses to accumulate unnoticed. As the train neared Granville at roughly 8:10 a.m., now carrying around 300 passengers, the locomotive abruptly derailed without warning. The metal wheels tore against the tracks, sparking showers of debris into the air. The train struck the supports of the Bold Street Bridge overhead, instantly dislodging stanchions and sending chunks of concrete and twisted steel plunging onto the rails below. The lead carriage was violently ripped open by a collapsing support pole, leaving several carriages trapped under the bridge's damaged framework. Before survivors could grasp the horror unfolding, the bridge itself, burdened by 570 tons, gave way. With a deafening roar, it collapsed onto carriages 3 and 4, crushing passengers beneath its immense weight. Minutes after the derailment, a vast and coordinated rescue operation began, involving police, firefighters, medical personnel, engineers, and railway staff, all racing against time to reach the victims. The efforts were immediately hampered by the topography. Emergency workers improvised ladders and temporary stairs to access the tracks below, while the immense weight of the collapsed bridge rendered lifting trapped carriages nearly impossible. As rescuers probed the wreckage, the scene descended further into chaos, compounded by an influx of curious onlookers. Thousands of spectators obstructed critical pathways, and some even disguised themselves to enter restricted areas. More than 250 officers were assigned solely to crowd management rather than rescue efforts. Nevertheless, responders squeezed into the precarious wreckage, confronting devastation of unimaginable scale. Survivors were pinned beneath tons of debris, contorted in impossible positions, while seats were flattened, windows shattered, and metal warped beyond recognition. For many who had perished, the bridge's crushing weight had compressed bodies to the point that heads and shoulders were forced below knee level. Others remained frozen in the postures they had assumed at the instant of collapse. Yet as survivors were freed from the wreckage, a new threat emerged, one that had not been anticipated. Many who had seemed close to safety suddenly collapsed, succumbing within moments of release. Some lost consciousness, others suffered cardiac arrest. This phenomenon, later understood as crush syndrome, occurs when prolonged compression of muscle tissue causes toxic substances to flood the bloodstream upon release. Without immediate intervention, kidney, heart, and lung failure often follow, claiming the lives of victims even in the arms of their rescuers. Rescuers witnessed this lethal condition unfold, leaving little time to respond, an observation that would profoundly influence future emergency protocols. Yet the dangers continued. The bridge's weight remained a constant menace, and even minor shifts in the rubble risked further collapses. A partial movement did indeed trap 2 emergency workers while crushing a portable generator. Complicating matters further, the train carried tanks of liquid petroleum gas for winter heating. The crash ruptured these cylinders, releasing flammable fumes that rendered the use of powered cutting tools extremely hazardous. Several passengers, initially surviving the derailment, later succumbed to these toxic gases. As hours passed, the operation transitioned from rescue to recovery. The last body was retrieved 31 hours after the crash, leaving behind exhausted personnel amid a quieted scene. Faces etched with grief bore witness to the human toll of the catastrophe. Investigators swiftly began piecing together the cause. Early suspicions targeted human error, including speculation that the train had been speeding or that the driver misjudged the curve. Yet the physical evidence suggested otherwise. The damage was inconsistent with excessive velocity. Instead, it revealed a history of structural neglect and deferred maintenance. The tracks at Granville had widened over time, allowing the locomotive's wheels to slip free. This location had witnessed previous derailments in 1967 and 1975, yet no corrective measures had been enacted. Rails were inadequately secured to the ties, and continual vibrations had further eroded stability. On that morning, one misaligned moment proved catastrophic. The Bold Street Bridge itself had also been compromised. Initially designed for lighter loads, modifications had nearly tripled its weight by adding concrete to level its roadway. When the derailed train collided with its supports, The weakened structure could not endure the impact. The inquiry ultimately revealed systemic failures. Years of neglect, cost-cutting, and ignored warnings culminated in the disaster. No single individual was directly held responsible, though the Public Transport Commission bore overarching accountability. Public outrage prompted reforms, but only at the expense of immense human loss. 84 perished, and over 200 were injured, making it the deadliest rail disaster in Australian history. On June 8, 1783, the earth beneath southern Iceland trembled violently, as if the land itself were tearing apart. A deep, resonant rumble grew into a thunderous crack that split the terrain, forcing the ground open and revealing a series of gaping fissures. From these ruptures, molten rock and fire erupted skyward, casting a red-orange glow visible for miles. Rivers of lava surged forward, consuming fields and farmland in their relentless path, while thick sheets of ash fell from the sky, filling the air with a choking, sulphurous stench. For the inhabitants of the region, it appeared as though the world itself had reached its end. Among those witnessing the cataclysm was Jon Steingrimsson, a Lutheran priest residing near the eruption. Having endured a lifetime of hardship, including epidemics and famine, Jon had already faced the harshness of Icelandic life. Yet even he had never witnessed devastation of this magnitude. His parish lay directly in the path of the fissure, part of the volcanic system encompassing Lakagígar, a 25-kilometer-long fissure containing more than 130 vents. Dormant for centuries, the fissure had now awakened with unprecedented ferocity, threatening not only Iceland but casting its effects across the northern hemisphere. As the eruption intensified, columns of lava shot as high as 2,400 meters, while thick plumes of smoke obscured the sun, turning day into night. Jon gathered his congregation inside the parish church, leading them in prayer during what became known as the Fire Mass. Miraculously, the advancing lava halted just short of the church, a reprieve that many interpreted as divine intervention, though geological features also contributed to the halt. Despite this temporary salvation, the eruption would continue unabated for 8 months, disgorging an estimated 42 billion tons of basaltic lava and emitting enormous volumes of sulfur dioxide and hydrofluoric acid. These toxic gases devastated local agriculture, killing livestock and rendering crops inedible. Jon meticulously recorded the suffering around him, noting how the chemicals corroded the cattle, softened bones, and poisoned the land. Humans, too, suffered severely. Dysentery, hair loss, heart palpitations, and other ailments afflicted the population, while famine and illness reduced Jon's parish from 613 residents to merely 93. Tragically, his own wife succumbed to kidney disease. Likely linked to the lingering effects of the eruption, the disaster's influence extended far beyond Iceland. Prevailing high-pressure winds carried ash and gases across Europe, darkening skies and creating red sunsets from Denmark to Great Britain. Crops failed, rivers flooded, and unusual weather patterns triggered thunderstorms and hail that devastated livestock. In England alone, extreme cold and prolonged frost caused an estimated 8,000 additional deaths. France faced famine and social unrest, conditions that would later contribute to the upheaval of the French Revolution. Across the Atlantic, North America endured record-breaking cold, frozen waterways, and heavy snowstorms, while Japan's ongoing famine worsened under the influence of the Icelandic haze. When the eruption finally subsided and poisonous gases dissipated, Jon chronicled the aftermath in meticulous detail. The landscape had been transformed into an alien expanse of jagged, blackened lava fields. Valleys lay buried beneath molten rock, rivers choked with ash and dead fish, and fertile pastures rendered barren. Approximately 1/5 of Iceland's population had perished, leaving an indelible mark on the nation and establishing Lakagígar. Even as the land recovered over subsequent years, the scars of fire and devastation remained. The eruption's legacy extended to future generations, preserving a vivid record of volcanic power and human endurance. Communities eventually rebuilt, yet the blackened lava fields of Lakagígar continue to bear witness to the catastrophic forces unleashed that summer. The SS Admella, a formidable steamer of mid-19th century Australian design, exemplified contemporary advancements in maritime engineering. Constructed with an iron hull and a single-screw propeller, the vessel measured nearly 200 feet in length and 26 feet across its beam. Riveted watertight bulkheads were installed as a safeguard against flooding, heralded as a modern innovation. For 3 years, the Admella had plied the route between Adelaide and Melbourne, commanded by Captain Hugh McEwen, whose meticulous skill ensured an impeccable record across 39 voyages. The ship carried lifeboats and emergency equipment, yet their use had never been seriously contemplated. In the early hours of August 5, 1859, the Admella departed Port Adelaide under clear skies, bearing 81 passengers and 28 crew members, along with 93 tons of copper, flour for the Victorian goldfields, assorted merchandise, and 4 prized racehorses securely stabled. A short stop at Semaphore added 3 more passengers and a crewman, raising the total aboard to 113. Families and travelers mingled on deck, enjoying the fresh sea air as the vessel pressed onward. By midnight, the Admella had covered roughly 100 miles. Though a dense fog settled over the waters, Captain McEwen remained confident of his position, anticipating a dawn arrival at Cape Northumberland. Yet a strong inshore current quietly drew the ship off course. Beneath the waves near present-day Carpenter Rocks lay a treacherous reef, infamous to mariners but invisible under the darkened sea. At approximately 4 hours a.m., the vessel struck the reef with a subtle bump, followed by the swell lifting the ship over and slamming it back onto the jagged rocks. The impact caused the vessel to keel until it rested broadside against the reef. Panic ensued as orders to abandon ship were shouted, yet confusion and fear pervaded the darkness. Within 15 minutes, the Admella's watertight bulkheads, designed for safety, failed catastrophically, splitting the ship into 3 sections. The funnel toppled, crushing a lifeboat, while ropes and chains whipped through the air, sweeping passengers and crew into the merciless sea. Horses were flung overboard, and those clinging to the midship section were swiftly carried away by the relentless current. On the bow section, women and children huddled together, holding onto wreckage for survival, while over 40 individuals clung to the rear deck, anchored by the weight of copper stored below. Waves relentlessly battered the exposed wreckage, tearing away railings and timbers, amplifying the peril. Signals fired toward Cape Northumberland Lighthouse failed, dampened by the fog and moisture. As dawn approached, the crew glimpsed another ship, the Havilah, yet their frantic attempts to attract attention went unnoticed. Desperation mounted as a lifeboat was discovered. A crewman attempted to reach it, tied to a line, but the cord broke, and he eventually drowned, highlighting the formidable strength of the currents. Later, the SS Bombay passed nearby, oblivious to the stranded survivors despite their cries and frantic gestures. Over the following days, survivors clung to wreckage with little food and no fresh water. Sharks circled beneath them, drawn by the bodies of the drowned. Resourceful sailors John Leach and Robert Knapman fashioned a makeshift raft from fragments of the ship, braving wave after wave to reach the shore. Their journey of 20 miles through swamps and sandhills culminated at Cape Northumberland Lighthouse, where keeper Ben Germain received them and dispatched urgent messages to summon assistance. A steamer, the Corio, and a lifeboat named Ladybird were mobilized, yet locating the wreck proved challenging in stormy winter seas. Survivors remained exposed to the elements, clinging to the wreckage for nearly 8 days. They endured freezing nights, relentless waves, and near starvation, with many succumbing to exhaustion or slipping silently into the ocean. By August 10th, when rescue crews reached the wreck, only 50 remained aboard the fragmented vessel. The survivors were emaciated, battered, and soaked through, yet clung to the remnants of the Admella. The Corio and Ladybird executed repeated attempts before finally retrieving the remaining passengers on the 8th day. The full scale of suffering became evident. One man, Hurtle Fisher, had lost over 50 pounds during the ordeal. Ultimately, 89 lives were lost, while only 24 survived, marking the tragedy as the deadliest maritime disaster in southern Australian history.